Welcome to this programme which is called Seach Lé. I'm Bob Carswell, sé Robert na Carslach mish, as Babaliam Shiwashaltacha gus Seach Lé. Munjavega, Adheen, Manx Fairy Law. James Franklin of Cultivanin tells us about a presentation this evening by Stephen Miller, RBV. Ceol of Retain, as large Jinu Ceol, the music of Brittany and Make Music Day. Chloe Woolley of Cultivanin explains how to enjoy these events. Cad Vannin, the Manx Cad. We hear from John Cannon about his new book. As Ounder Sophia Morrison and the Sophia Morrison Award. Regia Madrill of Cultivanin reveals the background to it. We'll hear first from James Franklin of Cultivanin about a free event you can enjoy this evening.
This is a talk by Stephen Miller, RBV, certainly one of the Isle of Man's greatest living folklorists and historians. Will be talking about a particular area of his interest, Manx fairy lore. It's a talk which he's entitled Talking and Telling Stories About the Fairies, and it will be this overview of all of the accounts of the fairies, or the little fellas, or the Munjavega in the Isle of Man, right through from George Waldron in the 1720s through to the Folklife Survey of the 1940s. And it is this complete sort of idea of what they are and our relationship to the little people. This is an event organised by Cultivanin with the Manx branch of the Celtic Congress, and we are putting it on in the Centenary Centre on Athol Street in Peel, of course, beginning at 7:30, free, although donations are very welcome if you feel like it.
The Online and Educational Resource Officer for Cultivanin, James Franklin. Hai podden moer de loer de rounsederen as de geolederen gus of Retain, de goilaren ons velje boer ons Lorient, queg blieners die der de henne. Rish queg bliener raas shen, geder au peurt de lai as manning ons shen, geneach iru beg de lai woon. Ach, queg blieners die der de henne, verkeer de altenen bokjuwen fanny, goldes riddenach au toyacht, maar velje bent in de piebenus drummen, ach le sport angie, as neer a shen renny scalia macht de goosjaach kjol je sorcelje, as downs as ellen yes. The music and dance of Brittany have become very popular here in the island, particularly since the 1970s, when there was more exposure to it, with groups visiting what has become Festival Anticeltique de Lorient, although it began as the Festival des Cornemuses, a festival for bagpipes. There's an opportunity coming up here in the island to enjoy some Breton music and a Breton-Manx collaboration, and also to make music as part of an international initiative, as Ngrenny de Cioli, Cultivanin's Manx Music Development Officer Chloe Woolley explains.
We've got the return of the Breton-Manx collaboration, Nia Nessan, and this is a combination of two Breton musicians, Lors Landa and Thomas Moisson, with Manx musicians Mira Royal and David Kilgallen. And we're going to have a series of events, actually. On the Friday the evening, Friday the 17th of June, we're going to have a bit of a fun Ceola's Gilg, a Breton and Manx music session down at the Albert Hotel in Port St Mary. So everyone's welcome to come and hear some Breton music and contribute a few songs if they like. The next day, on Saturday the 18th of June, Incrinict is helping put on this concert of Breton Manx music with the group, Nia Nessan, and that's going to be in Oncombe Parish Hall at 7:30. You can buy tickets online through Eventbrite for that, or there'll be tickets on the door, £12 for adults and £6 for under 16s. So that evening we'll start off as a concert, and we'll hear some of the songs and tunes from their album. They brought out an album a few months ago. So that'll be premiere in the Isle of Man of some of that music. And then we'll push the tables back and it'll be a fest noz. And for those who don't know, that's Breton ceilidh dancing. So everyone get up on the floor for that.
And that leads into National Making Music Day, which comes up on Tuesday the 21st. And that's going to have an international flavour as well, as it always does, of course.
Make Music Day, or Lair Jinu Ceol, as we've dubbed it in the Isle of Man, it's actually started off as a French music festival called Fête de la Musique. And basically it's all over France, and then it's been adopted by lots of other countries. It was a day of non-profit music making. It was encouraging everyone to get their instruments out or to have spontaneous music making all over the towns. So we will have our Breton musician with us. Thomas Wasson will be with us. So I'll be taking him to some schools during the day to play some Breton music for the children, and we'll be visiting Douglas and up to Manx Radio for a little spot to celebrate Make Music Day.
Last year, when you celebrated the day, you had an exchange with some music students from elsewhere, and you're repeating that this year?
We are, yes. So one of the initiatives that Make Music Day UK has brought about is exchanging folk songs with other countries. So this year, Bree, the Manx Youth Group, we're going to be meeting at 3 o'clock in the Henry Bloom Noble Library on Saturday the 18th to learn a German folk song. And then we're going to record that, and then we'll release it on Make Music Day, because obviously a lot of the children are at school on the Tuesday. So that's a nice collaboration, and we've put forward some Manx songs, so we're hoping that musicians around the world will have a go at singing in Manx or playing a Manx tune. And there's lots of other opportunities to get involved with Make Music Day. This is actually their 40th anniversary. So I know that a lot of the countries around the world are making significance of the fact that it was born in France. So they're exploring French connections. So they're encouraging people to perform French music, by French composers. There's other projects that anyone could get involved with internationally. They've got a scheme called My Song Is Your Song. I know that Andy North from the Fectones did this last year, and he swapped one of his songs with an Australian band. So it's a different interpretation of your song. And this year, Make Music Day internationally is trying to encourage people to film or take a photo of yourself playing some music in a significant place and then post it and share it online. So maybe someone would like to go and join the Bee Gees statues and do a Bee Gees song and film themselves, or go up Snaefell and sing a song. So they've called that On Location as a Make Music Day initiative.
And Grenny de Ceoli, the Manx Music Development Officer to Culture Vannin, Chloe Woolley, and opportunities to hear Lorch Landa and Thomas Moisson from Brittany, and David Kilgallen and Mira Royal from the island. That'll be over the next couple of days, including Saturday with Nier Naissant, the quartet coming together for a concert and fest-noz. And then next Tuesday, the 21st of June, you can perhaps do a video of yourself taking part in the international celebration of Make Music Day, Lair Jinu Ceol. Os na sean febre naiach, va bein de chire cochanus je sorcher bi, e de pecher bi, waar jit de vee en noil, na tacher der lievon, as an alien. Rau fissain de rauwe peich sjons na naichten, neem de ben va poest ristunje, as van shannerege as alien vanning, ridden jane so shen. Ach, va jinu shen inrichen treva skiel jarwach on. Gerauwe jinu sair de grei de rauwen dunje shen as va dunveris jin tege, tre renne maru ben voch, bol en jach on sausen, ruggit just troggit, bol en jach san alien. Ger de rauw shen kochianus father na snether. The idea of the island as an ideal, a haven of tranquility, is one that was promoted to boost the island's tourist trade, and it glossed over a number of riots and scandals from the island's past. Not every story or every person connected in some way with the island is necessarily a positive one, and that's a point that comes out of a new publication by Lochtan Books of Mackald, and I went to Ramsey to speak to the author, John Cannon. You've just published The Manx Cad, the remarkable story of Alfred Curfew, Squire of Ballamore. How did you get to know about him in the first place?
Well, I was, for several years, the curator at Ramsey Heritage Centre. And in the centre we must have had well over 1,000 Midwood images scanned. And there's an image which appears in the book of a car parked on South Promenade, more or less outside Midwood Studios, with a gentleman in the driving seat, and the person sitting alongside him is wearing a fez, obviously of Arab or African origin. And I thought, well, what was going on here, and what was happening here? So you were able to make out the number plate on the car. From that, I started to research in the Manx Museum to find out, and discovered that it was owned by a gentleman called Alfred Curfey of Ballamore. So I started to dig in to find out a little bit more about him using the iMuseum newspapers and things like that, and found that for a very brief period of time on the island he was exceedingly well known. And as I like to say, the Ramsey Courier in particular went into full hello mode, and basically everything that this gentleman did, Ramsey Courier avidly reported, other Manx newspapers less so. And so that sort of like started me on a trail of trying to investigate where he'd come from, because he was a man of mystery even then. If anybody asked him, which Curfey are you, he was obviously very reticent to go into any detail. And the more I dug into it, the more fascinating his life became. So.
Now, he had this link with Ballamore, but most of his life was spent elsewhere, and quite an international figure.
Yes, indeed. I mean, he was born in on the Wirral. His Manx ancestry traces back to his paternal grandfather. His father was born in Toxteth, in Liverpool, but sadly died when Alfred was only 6 years old. Alfred himself moved to London. Well, moved originally with his family to Brighton, but then moved to London, and seems to have been quite a transatlantic liner setter, I suppose, rather than jet setter, as you might say for those days. And he eventually came to Ballamore using the proceeds that he'd gained from basically getting a very wealthy American to pay him off to leave his wife alone. Something in the region of £20,000, which is the modern equivalent of over $1 million. And he had persuaded the gentleman, Andrew Mellon, that his family home on the Isle of Man, namely Ballamore, was falling into disrepair and was up for sale, and if only he had the funds, he could basically purchase it, and he was basically paid off to leave Andrew's wife alone.
The link with Andrew Mellon takes us across to the United States. How did you research the material based around all the toings and froings that he had in America and in Canada as well?
A very good source is that there's a very good biography written of Andrew Mellon by a gentleman called David Cannondine, which was published a few years ago now. And he had made numerous references to Alfred Curfey as the villain that turned up in the story. And Andrew Mellon, of course, was one of the wealthiest men in America. I think in the early 1920s he was the third highest taxpayer in the United States. He was a very big wig in Pittsburgh. In fact, you could almost say he owned Pittsburgh at the time. And Alfred had I believe, a previous connection with Andrew Mellon's wife, who was a Macmullen, a famous brewery family in Hertfordshire. And so that sort of tied up. And then the research element came obviously originally from the book by David Cannondine, but then obviously I had a look through. You can look onto websites like ancestry.co.uk and find my past and things. You get a lot of information about transatlantic travel on there. And then various other elements. It's research on the internet, digging around, and as you find pieces of information, digging deeper to try and see where he came up. And it's, as I say, the more I dug, the more fascinating he became. He was obviously quite the rogue. It started off, obviously, as I say, I was in the Heritage Centre, and as you may well be aware, Manx National Heritage every October run a series of open days, and during my time at the centre, I used to open it up on those weekends and give a talk on various topics, generally relating to to Ramsey history. But I also gave a talk on Alfred Kerfee. That went down very well. I've given the talk also to the Isle of Man Victorian Society and to several other organisations on the island, and they've all said, "Oh, you must write a book." So gradually I got the information together, and I was still finding out information about him. It was quite late on, after I'd given the talks and things, that I discovered that he'd been some sort of secret agent for the British government in Mexico during the First World War. But I thought, well, at some point I've got to stop here and write something down. So basically that's what I did, and then hooked up with Sarah Goodwins, as you know, from Lockton Books, and we kindly came to an arrangement whereby we could get this into print, and finally we have after some years.
So is this going to be volume 1? Because I'm sure you won't have stopped researching. You refer in the book to some years where there's only sketchy information available, so presumably you're trying to fill in some gaps there.
I would love to, but we only have one picture of him. Considering the fact that when he wanted it, he was not averse to finding publicity. I found it remarkable that there is only one picture that we've been able to find, and that came out of the court papers for the Mellon divorce case in Pittsburgh. So there is nothing that I've been able to trace on the Isle of Man that gave a picture. The picture of the car that I mentioned, which belonged to him, was the person in the driving seat's actually the chauffeur, and the gentleman in the passenger seat, which I said was of Arab or African, is actually probably Egyptian. And it stems from the fact that using his money from Andrew Mellon, he made substantial investments in Egypt. So yes, I would love to find out gaps, particularly after the end of the First World War. There's only elements that I was able to find from the period, sort of like from 1920 through to his death in 1938. I'm sure he was up to a lot of stuff during that time as well. But information is sparse. So yes, it might be that, I don't know if it'll be enough for a volume 2, but it might be that the book might get a revamp at some time in the future, with all being well, with perhaps additional elements added.
John Cannon, the author of the very interesting story of The Manx Cad, the remarkable story of Alfred Kerfee, Squire of Ballamore, published by Lockton Books and available now at £8.95. Gerder Sophia Morrison ruggich sy flein hochi jeg as naijeg as died, stolia fedden mach monna machionek der a jera nair hidu jeg. Ta shilia biw eishes nish, der awi ons connachen as kummel merish an neem moorek eg a tre fi na nien. Fuddy no der awi golgus gold privejaks an urchen. A chanelli der na hochi jeg as keir feed as giant, de welshin gold toyach de glash na enemek, Cúna leis níl an bacht ons putni hinge de chagre as reiche an farastai, as eis de wel sim moorek a gilg, as ceol vanning, clien ons blas vanning. Credu bentenden van Jebega, shen was Stephen Miller RBV Lord Machan mush was nish, as cushion edda geldjach nies, weg is je wegent maagwagen de Britannia on shores and Shelley near Nesson. Many young people in the island will have reached the end of a stressful time for them, preparing for and taking examinations of various sorts. Later will come the stress of forthcoming results, of course. Amongst the examinations here in the island are those for the Manx language. Steward at Cultivannin's director, Bríse Madrill, tells us about a new opportunity for people who've been taking their examinations in the Manx language this year and in the future too.
This is a wonderful new award called the Sophia Morrison Award, and it's for young people under 18 who are doing the Teisht Cadj and Gilgach, the GCSE equivalent for Manx, in the Manx language. And this is the first year that the award will be made, and it'll be a student who's sitting in the summer this year, and the winner will be selected by the Department of Education, Sport and Culture's Manx Language Unit. and they'll have this wonderful Caervai trophy, which is a bronze longship presented to the school, and they'll have a medal to keep as well. And it's in memory of Sophia Morrison, who is well known as a Manx cultural activist, somebody who supported the Manx language as secretary to the Manx Language Society in Cheshire Gilgach, and somebody who really focused on encouraging young people. And the bequest that makes this possible comes from a relative of hers, so that's very nice. It's from the late Crellin Frost and Carol Frost, and Carol was a very good Manx speaker, and this is something that I think Crellin wanted to do in her memory, so that you would know that there's a great value to the Manx language. It's incredibly important to people here and people around the world, and it was incredibly important to him, and to see that his family had been involved in really nurturing the language, and he wanted to nurture that for future generations. There's a brilliant team at the Department of Education, Sport and Culture leading on the Manx language, and every pupil has the opportunity to learn Manx, and that's a great thing. That's something that didn't happen when I was a child. This isn't just a trophy and a medal. There's prize money as well. And all you have to do, if you were selected as the best person for this, you get the prize money of £500. And you just write or produce a short piece in Manx. And that could be anything from a poem to a short story to just a small factual article. It could even be that you write a song. So that will be up to the individual. But then we can create a little anthology of the prize winners over the years, and that's something that Crellin really wanted to happen. So the things that people notice on your CV, on your university application if you're going to it, but also it's a language qualification that shows that you have studied and you've achieved a certain level, and it is equivalent to the other GCSEs, so there's a great value to it. I did GCSEs in physics, and I don't know very much about physics these days. So you do them because it's good for you to learn a certain amount of things at a time and to show that you can apply yourself and do that. But also it is a great advantage to other countries that speak more than one language. They're very interested in the fact that there's a Manx language here, and that you as a young person have studied it to TCG, to GCSE equivalent. So I think it's a great strength, and it's sometimes the thing that marks you out as different that will mean that you will get that university place. One of my old next door neighbours was a very talented young speaker, and it was the thing that was noticed on her application and got her a place at the university that she wanted to go to. But also learning languages is incredibly brilliant for your brain. So if you learn one language, it's easier to learn another language, but it also helps you make connections between different sort of thought systems, really. And when you can get to the stage in a language where you can dream in it, you're really winning. If you have an understanding of different languages and different systems of thought, you can have greater empathy, and you can understand how different people work and how different you can see somebody else's perspective. So I studied German at university, and I could understand a way that certain sets of German people can think and have thought for centuries, as I studied their literature and their music and their culture and their history. And it gives you a different perspective. And I think it's a wonderfully liberating thing to learn more than one language. And you'll find that most people in the rest of the world speak more than one language. People within the British and Irish Isles can think, oh, well, we only need to speak English. But actually, there are people who are speaking English and Punjabi or Bengali or Japanese or German or French or Polish. And most people have experience of more than one language. So it's something that you should embrace, because it's great fun. It does mean that you can have a better relationship with people that you'll meet from all different backgrounds. And it's really worthwhile.
Steward of Culture Vanning, the Director of Culture Vanning, Bríse Madrill. As a sent, Tashin Erjit, Gus Jeran, Claire Shorish, which brings us to the end of this edition of Shach Lay. So from me, Bob Carswell, as Masov on Peen, Robert Karslach, Sled New.